Hi, Jim Humphrey from Imminent Threat Defense Firearms Training. Let's take apart this Western Field 550 pump action shotgun. This is the Western Field Model 550B, which is a 16 gauge pump action shotgun. Virtually identical to the Mossberg 500 of its day. Disassembly starts with removing the barrel. I'll start by pulling the action about halfway back and then loosening the takedown screw. These things can be very stubborn, especially if they get over tightened. I find these special curved soft jaw pliers very handy for this type of nut. So to remove the trigger housing, there's a single pin on these shotguns. It can be just pushed out or lightly tapped out. Now lift up in the trigger housing. I'm going to be very careful to lift it up in the back and then slide it to the rear without breaking those lugs in the front. And then these shell latches, or what are called the cartridge stop and cartridge interrupter, should fall out. The magazine tube just unscrews. You notice I removed the rear stock just for the purposes of the video. It's not necessary to remove that for takedown. Also, I didn't have to remove the magazine. The bolt comes out either way, but it always starts with lifting up on this bolt slide and removing it. That then allows the action bars to disengage. And I can remove the slide action group. The bolt just slides out the front of the receiver, and then the elevator is removed by just pinching it and pulling it out. I took the fore-end assembly apart to give this thing a real good clean. Probably not something I do on a regular basis, but got the receiver, the follower, the magazine spring, the magazine tube, slide action spring, the fore-end and slide action, and the slide action nut here. So let's just put it back together. Slide action spring goes in over the threads, so on the receiver end, pushes up against that collar. I use a little anti-seize on the slide action nut and on the magazine tube threads against the receiver. These don't get taken off very often, so they have a tendency to get real rusted up and seize up on you if you don't give them a little protection. This magazine tube nut has a couple of keyways cut in it, so it kind of takes a special tool. This is just a castle nut tool that I've used on a number of different firearms. As I said, it's really not necessary to remove the magazine tube to get the bolt out for cleaning, but I did in this case. So when I put it back together, I'm going to put it back at the opposite way, as if I didn't remove the magazine tube. So I'll put the magazine tube back on first, so a little bit out of order, just to show you how I can put it back together or take it apart either way. So the magazine tube goes inside the receiver, and the receiver action bars go in these little holes in the receiver. The threads in the magazine tube are cut in such a way that it gets progressively harder to turn as it gets closer to bottoming out. So I don't torque it all the way down. It's kind of self-locking, so I just get it snug, close to the bottom, but not too tight. Okay, just a quick nomenclature review. We've got the fore-end slide in action. We've got the bolt slide, the receiver, the elevator, and the bolt. So before I get started in this assembly, I want to point out that the elevator has these two lugs on the sides, and they're going to have to fit in this holes on the left and right hand side of the receiver. And the bolt slide has a couple of cutouts in it that fit in these lugs, cutouts in the action bars. So I'll start by just squeezing the elevator and getting in those holes in the receiver. In order to install the bolt, I push up on the bolt lock, hold it back inside, slide it in from the front to lift up in the elevator, and then the bolt should go back in quite easily. I'm going to put it back in about halfway. There's a couple of cutouts in the receiver that allow the bolt slide to drop down on top of the bolt, and this lug on the bottom of the bolt slide fits into the bolt. Once that's lined up and aligned, I then push down on the back of the bolt slide so I can lift the front up, and I can push the action bars underneath it to allow those lugs to line up and fit, and then it should slide back and forth freely. Okay, now I'm ready to complete the assembly by installing the cartridge interrupter and the cartridge stop and the trigger housing, which is held in with that trigger housing pin. Pretty easy to figure these out. The cartridge interrupter has a little lug on the side which goes through a hole in the side of the receiver. So that really only fits one way, it's on the right side of the receiver. The cartridge stop fits on the other side of the receiver. It's got a little hook so it faces inboard. So this goes on the left side of the receiver. And you have to hold that in place because it won't stay. And feed that housing in from the front. Get those lugs in the little grooves and then slide it forward. Have to fuss with these, with both the cartridge stop and the cartridge interrupter to get them in place as I get the trigger housing in place. But once I get the trigger housing in place, the holes should line up and I can just press that trigger housing pin into place. Okay, to install the barrel, I'll push the action back just a little bit, slide the barrel on, and screw down that takedown screw. The takedown screw is ratcheted. I don't have to tighten it down tight. Just take it down till it's snug and then back one click. That'll hold securely. All right, that's about it.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm Jim Humphrey from Imminent Threat Defense Firearms Training. Remember, if you're a gun owner, you're an ambassador for all of us. So be responsible, be safe, and always represent firearms in a positive manner. Thanks for watching.